Welcome, everybody, to Crossing the Line with Greg Heym and Scott Nadler, CrossCountry Mortgage, our good buddy, and Ray on claps.
Wow, aggressive claps.
Ray's
got a lot of energy today. You feel it, right?
I'm glad somebody does. Maybe he should get in front of this mic. Unfortunately, I was at the Ranger game last night, and it just sucked the life out of me. Just 2 chances to move ahead in the playoff schedule, and they screw it up.
I was at a nursing home on Saturday visiting my grandfather, so it sounds like we had very similar experiences.
How old's your grandfather?
92.
Wow, that's great.
Doesn't remember a thing, and there's a volume control issue in the nursing home, but it was good to see him.
Well, that is great, and it's a blessing he's still here.
Yes.
So today's March 10th. We always say the day, just in case the world ends tomorrow. We didn't know about it. And to point out national days.
Here we go.
So today
I'm excited.
Is 2 national days you're going to love.
Oh, man.
One is National Napping Day. Now, this is in response to daylight savings time, right? Because it's like 1 hour jet lag. All of a sudden, everybody's like dead to the world. So you should be napping today. I'll be taking naps occasionally during the show. So just.
I have a nap hack.
Really?
Yeah.
How does that work?
You drink a glass of, let's say, green
Scotch?
tea. No scotch.
Okay.
Green tea or coffee. You need caffeine.
Right.
Then take a 20-minute nap. It takes about 20 minutes for the caffeine to hit your system, and when you wake up, you get this burst of energy.
Okay.
So that's our nap hack of the day.
We'll have to try that before next week's podcast. See if that helps the energy level. Today is also National Mario Day. Now, not people named Mario, the video game character.
I figured, yeah.
The stereotypical Italian plumber, who, along with his brother, fight evil.
Yeah.
Through piping. But yeah, I was never a Nintendo guy. I went right from like Atari to like computer games, and then Sega.
I like Mario Kart.
Mario Kart's a lot of fun, but you got Mario, Wario. There's like too many of these things.
Yeah, Mario is the OG though.
That's the guy that still gets all the attention.
Yeah, he gets a day too.
Try to explain to my son that we used to have to go to arcades to play video games, and how they were terrible places with smoke all over the place, and like.
Is there a specific reason why March 10th is
Mario Day? I don't know. Maybe it's the day it came out.
Maybe.
I didn't know how to do this much research. I thought you'd just be impressed that I knew that.
I thought you'd be on top of this.
It's Monday morning. Come on,
Do we normally record on other days? This is our day.
I know, it's true. But I normally not coming in after watching the Rangers lose 7-3, and it's like, ugh.
A lot of excuses, Greg.
At least St. John's pulled one out at the buzzer. The Big East champs.
That was impressive.
And getting ready for the tournament this week, and it's going to be exciting. This is huge. I mean,
they're a gritty team. I feel like every year there's a team that America kind of gets behind. They might be too high of a seed, but I feel like their style of play, and you got Patino.
I think it's Patino. He's from New York, and he belonged here all along.
It's a good story.
And they did this video on the Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon was hysterical. He's a great interview, Patino. Looks good in the white suit, as we found out. And it's great for the city. Having the Knicks and St. John's be relevant in the same year has not happened in a very long time.
Agreed.
So that is good. We know who the Knicks can't beat. They can't beat OKC. They can't beat Cleveland. And they certainly, can't beat the Celtics. So we haven't found anybody that St. John's can't beat yet, because even their 4 losses have been by, I think, a total of 7 points.
I didn't know Knicks bashing was on the agenda for today. So
with Brunson out, it's gonna be a rough couple of weeks.
I know.
That was
although maybe it gives an opportunity to some of these other guys to step up. So it could be a blessing.
Well, so far,
glass half full, Greg.
So far, Deuce didn't really get it done. We'll give him another game, see what happens.
Fair enough.
And as always, coming to you from beautiful Studio 1873.
Your dream home is closer than you think. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and I'm here to get you the perfect loan to match your perfect home. From first-time home buyers to seasoned homeowners, I've helped clients make their moves with confidence. Ready for a smooth, stress-free home buying experience? Let's get you moving today. Call me and let's turn those dreams into keys.
All right, so the headline story is jobs report. It always is. Our life revolves around the jobs report. Lower than expected in February, 151,000 jobs. They're looking for, depending on who you asked, 160 to 170. Not the best news, not the worst news, right? I mean, we'd heard a lot about layoffs, planned layoffs hitting their highest levels since the pandemic. We knew there was going to be a slowing. So when you read this, you weren't too shocked, right? I mean, if it surprised the upside, that would have been a little more shocking.
I agree. I think it was more about the loss of full-time jobs versus part-time jobs. I think it was a loss of something like 1.2 million.
And we've been seeing this for a long time. You know, we've pointed out that so much. There's two things about the hiring that we don't like. One, it's either in government or government-supported industries like healthcare, which again created the most jobs last month, or it's all part-time.
Right.
Now, the disconnect between the household survey and the payroll survey, which we'll talk more about in a second, causes that too, you know, because the payroll survey doesn't care if it's full-time or part-time.
Also, looking at, I think Jamie Dimon came out recently. He was caught in a meeting with employees and managers talking about needing people to come back into the office. And I wonder, more and more companies are doing that, where they're requiring people to come back in. And if you're seeing people now face to face, seeing what they're actually doing, maybe some of that work is getting exposed in a way. I remember during the pandemic, at that time, I had two people on my team. A woman who's a 20-year veteran in the business, and then I had someone who was relatively new. He was in his late 20s. The woman thrived during COVID. She had her Peloton in her room. She would work out. She was so efficient. She was amazing. The guy, on the other hand, struggled mightily and would take a lot of time off, and he just could not handle. He needed some accountability. He needed someone to be there with him.
That's understandable.
And I think now you're seeing another, a reshuffling of the deck of sorts, where people are now coming back in. You're seeing managers look at things, and I think that is also a factor.
Wall Street does that perpetually. They're looking for anybody to cut any chance they can get so they can hire people where they're making money.
Their biggest expense, for sure.
Yeah, and they lease all the expensive office space. And office leasing has been pretty brisk here in Manhattan, at least for the Class A properties. The other ones are not doing as well. But yeah, it's time to get in.
Right.
You know, the MTA needs the money too. I don't think you're ever going to plug that $60 billion capital funding gap, but they certainly need the money. So other highlights of the report: unemployment rate ticked up 0.1%, 4.1%, still incredibly low. I mentioned healthcare added the most jobs, but financial activities was second. So that's good news. Those people make money.
On the unemployment, how much attention do you pay to the U6 unemployment rate?
The news will talk about it. You know, so you have the unemployment. Basically, you have to be looking for a job to be unemployed. You know, and then you have all these numbers that go up, and U6 is basically like an underemployment number, for lack of a better term.
Because that went from 7.5% to 8%.
Right. Which
is a big jump.
Yeah, and I think people are spending longer on unemployment. I think, again, we're getting back to a more normal market.
Right.
There were so many job openings. We'll get the latest JOLTS number later this week, actually tomorrow, I believe. So we'll see. And that data lags, though. But it used to be that you could just quit your job and have a new one by lunchtime, right? Who cared? Now it's become like it kind of used to be, like it may take you a little bit. And I think people are acting like that means things are really bad, but no, that just means things aren't incredibly hot like they used to be. And, you know, wages aren't growing as fast as they were for that reason too. There's no need to be paying people a lot more or allowing the remote work you used to.
Right.
The thing about the unemployment rate, or the U6, is you want to look at what's happening. So why did that number go up when, according to the payroll survey, we added jobs? And you say, well, either the household survey had a much different result, which it certainly did. So 151,000 plus it was the number in the payroll survey. The household survey was minus 588,000.
Right.
Now that is a big swing. So we always point out the payroll survey is twice the size of the household survey, and there are always these disconnects. So the reason is the job loss, because the labor force participation rate hasn't really budged. You know, if more people get encouraged and join the labor force and that rate goes up, unemployment can go up, and that's not a bad thing. It's people are actually getting more optimistic. So, you know, you see more people working part-time, working multiple jobs and being on unemployment longer, but it's not like these are pointing to any imminent recession. We're going to have a segment about that coming up because there's so much talk about that now.
What a tease.
I know. So now you have to stick around and watch. So I'll talk faster or hit the speed to 1.5 times. My voice is low enough. You'll still be able to understand. No huge revisions to the prior 2 months, a net loss of 2,000 for December and January. Wages up as expected, 0.3% last month. Year over year, 4%. That was a little below forecast, not a huge deal. The average job growth the last year has been 168,000, so it's not that bad in that regard. A lot of people will say, well, the DOGE, activities and the reductions, did that have anything to do with the number not being better? No. There was a 10,000 job decline in federal workers. But this data was collected the week ending February 12th. You need time to tabulate all this stuff. The reductions actually started like a day or two after that. So this really doesn't capture anything that happened in February of significance. So we'll have to wait till next month when the revision to February comes out, which I think could be a rather large one. If the numbers we're hearing like 60,000 were actually true. We talked about the unemployment rate. So what does all this mean? Well, job growth was decent. I mean, that's good. We'll see what the revisions show us. Again, I think it's going to be a big one, but who knows what'll happen in March? Wages still growing at a decent pace. We'll get CPI numbers this week, but remember, prices were up 0.5% in January. That was a big increase. So that is more than the wage increases. So that's a little concerning. But again, that will help with inflation. And nothing in this report is going to change the Fed's mind when they meet later this month. And in fact, we had a statement from Jerome Powell last week, saying that we're on hold until we figure out what's going on with these tariffs and other things.
Right.
And we're going to have rants about that later. But the first rant is about federal government employment, because this is something I'm not going to say near and dear to my heart. I was a federal government employee during the Clinton administration and working for the BLS. Here's some facts, because a lot of people come to me and be like, this is terrible. We can't gut the federal government. We are not gutting the federal government. There's about 3 million federal employees right now. That includes civilian and military. We're not going to break it down every which way but loose. Why do we assume that's the right amount? Are we just married to it because it's been that way for a while? Like, should we just keep it the same way ever? Or should we shift resources? Government, what they do changes. How they do it changes. A decade ago, it was 2.8 million. So we've seen this increase. It was 3.1 million when I worked there in the early 90s. Actually, Al Gore was put in charge of trying to reduce the size of government, and they did that. In the 90s, the number of federal employees fell by 13%. And the world didn't end. It didn't. So if it is 60-something thousand, 62,000 is the number that keeps getting thrown out that have been, that are leaving, that's 2% of the current payroll. Yeah. Since when does a 2 or 3% reduction in payroll dramatically cut services?
And this happens with every company when a new CEO or a new CFO is brought in.
Right.
If Brown Harris Stevens, for example, opened up offices or tried a new program where they were like, you know what, we're bullish on igloos in Alaska, and we're going to start promoting. We're going to open up offices out there. We're going to hire agents. We're going to hire staff. You're not going to
send me there, are you?
We're not going to send you there. No, we can still stay here.
Cool.
And then all of a sudden, 2 years of investment in Alaska, it turns out that, you know what, igloos aren't selling like what we thought, and Bess and her team decide to cut back. That's what they're doing. They're looking at things that have worked that may not. Now, you may not agree with everything, and some of the decisions that are being made may not be the right ones, but this is not out of the norm for any company, let alone a government, when a new administration is coming in to reevaluate where their money is going and where taxpayer money is ultimately going.
And the people are actually yelling at me, I don't know why, that I better get my Social Security. It's like, that's automated, right? There isn't a guy or a woman who pushes the pay your Social Security button. It happens automatically. And we hear this nonsense when we have these government shutdowns. Now, it's disgusting that the government, can't fund itself for the year. We have to have these continuing resolutions. And by the way, we're going to have to face another one at the end of this week. Maybe they can get an agreement through the end of the fiscal year, which ends in September. That would be nice that we don't have to think about this. But people always assume the worst. They think if the government shuts down, that there's no Social Security checks, the Army goes home, and nothing happens. And it's not the way it works. This has been going on. It was a government shutdown in 1995 that got me to leave BLS and get a job at the Real Estate Board in New York that brought me here eventually. So it's not like these things never happen. It's disgusting that it's become far too frequent that we don't worry so much about it. They'll figure out. It's a government, right? But remember, the federal government's the only organization in this country that can just deficit spend.
Let's look at the other side of it, though.
Okay.
If you are an employee of the government, you have by and large, a pretty stable job. You're earning a good income. So if you're in an area like DC or Northern Virginia, let's say, where you have a lot of government employees in those areas, what does that do to local businesses? Where you have from housing to spending, if you have people in those areas that are government workers that all of a sudden are unemployed, what does that do to those local economies there?
It's not just the government workers, too. The people that are contractors for the government, and I have a family member that does that, and obviously it's concerned. Also, they've been ordered back into their offices. Mm-hmm. Good friend of my son's now, this family has to move back. So I appreciate that it's not good for anybody to lose a job. Most of these people took buyouts, from what I understand, which were very generous. I'm not saying that maybe they preferred that didn't happen. I don't know. And it's a shame, and it's not good for areas like Washington, D.C. and the Virginia suburbs over there. The housing markets could be impacted by it, but we don't know. One of the things we've seen is a lot of baby boomers just retiring off into the sunset now because they've made a decent amount of money. And, I don't know that I made that much when I worked for the federal government. Maybe some of these people have, and maybe some of them have retirement plans that are good enough. But I just think that we just make assumptions that any changes are bad. These are not dramatic yet. Could they get worse? I don't know. We'll see.
I've also seen there are a lot of people in government now who are still employed, who are looking at this as an opportunity for them, right? So if you are, let's say you're working at a store, any store, and the owner of the store fires 5 employees and you're still there, that's an opportunity for you. You have some leverage where now I'm still here. I can prove myself. I can get promoted. So I think you're hearing stories of government employees who are looking at it that way as well, which is a great attitude. It's a great way to look at it, saying, okay, I survived this first round. Now it's kind of a wake-up call, and it's also an opportunity for me to advance within whatever department that they're ultimately in.
And things do change. The New York regional office of the Bureau of Labor Statistics that I worked in doesn't exist anymore. They merged it in with other regions. It happens.
Yeah.
And we want government to be more efficient. And, I think that we just need to relax. I know that this is all hitting right away at once. Maybe if we weren't, being hit from multiple sides, people would be a little calmer about this. But We'll keep you posted as best we can on what goes on with federal government employment. And, we're just trying to present the facts. I think that people hear things. Obviously, their own political beliefs get involved in this as well. And that's perfectly understandable. And hopefully things will calm a little bit in this venue.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, we're back. And, we teased talking about recessions. Mm-hmm. That's how you get the ratings up. You scare them.
It's working.
I don't think
I feel a lot more people are.
They're like, oh, great. All right.
Watching right now. So, yeah.
So why do people think this? Well, there's a lot of good reasons why people might be a little worried. Stocks negative for the year. Not having a good run lately. Job growth slowing a bit. Consumer spending down in January. We'll find out. Retail sales come out. What February brought. Inflation still running hotter than expected. Then you start talking about stagflation, which again is when prices are rising and no real economic growth. Tariff, everywhere you go being talking about. That's scaring people.
Yep.
Price certain goods may go up. Trade wars, that's frightening. Not making consumers very confident lately. The trade deficit hit a record $131 billion in January. That was really companies trying to get stuff in here before it was going to be tariffed. So we always talk about the Atlanta Fed's GDP now, because GDP later would be too late. Now they do a running estimate as data comes in, and right now their forecast for the first quarter this year is negative 2.4% growth. Now remember the GDP equation: C plus I plus G plus NX. Consumption, what means Scott buy? I basically investment or inventories, or stuff you make but don't necessarily sell. Government is the G, and net exports, right? So if we're importing records amounts, that alone is going to subtract a significant amount from the GDP number, enough to make it very negative potentially. Maybe these tariff situation gets worked out and that changes. Also, but remember, consumer spending was negative to start the year. So there is reason for concern.
And that was the main factor why the Atlanta Fed revised their estimates.
Every couple of days, when new data comes out, they make a revision. It was dead on last quarter, but it seldom is dead on, this early, because we only have January and a very little bit of February data. So
the pace at which that changed, though, was pretty
dramatic.
fascinating. I mean, in the last 90 days, it went from 2.9% to 2.5% to negative 1.5%. So, and then, now you said it's negative 2.8% now,
2.4.
Right? 2.4%. So
don't scare them any more than we have to.
We'll see what they come out with next. But the pace at which that changed, I think people are focusing on.
Well, and also, like you mentioned, the Fed has basically said we're not doing anything until we figure out, what these policies on tariffs are going to be. So there won't be rate cuts. Now, remember, we had a full % of rate cuts last year that should start to provide some support to the economy starting now, or should have started already. So maybe that will help. But I think that when people are constantly worried that prices are still too high, when we haven't seen any real deflation, except in energy prices, but they seem to go right back up as soon as you start enjoying that. Now they're worried that some of the other goods they buy may be a little more expensive. I understand that. And we talk about self-fulfilling prophecies. As they become less confident, they're going to say, hey, we're going to tighten up and just see what the next couple of months bring. So it's now let's talk a little bit more tariffs. I know we've been talking about it a lot, but the Treasury Secretary said something really, really interesting, and it's great to put it in a headline. He said, addressing a group of economists, because they like to hear stuff like this, quote, access to cheap goods is not the essence of the American dream. Now, a lot of people are going, sure it is. I like cheap goods, But as the administration and the Treasury Department has to look at the whole picture here. It's not just about how cheap can we get goods from other countries, and we shouldn't tariff them because they get more expensive. They have to look at what our products are happening to our products that we're selling overseas. Are they being tariffed, and should we levy the same tariffs or reciprocal tariffs? Are we worried if we tariff other countries' stuff, they'll start tariffing our stuff? It's like tariff everything. So basically, Secretary Bessent said that there's three purposes of this whole discussion, right? And tariffs in general. One, it's a source of revenue. We know that we have deficits in this country, and we owe almost $40 trillion, and that scares people. And as rates have gone up, we're paying a lot more on our debt, right? And that's scary. Number two, to protect our industries and workers from unfair practices around the world. If our products are being tariffed, we have to do something to protect it. And why not use this as an incentive to have companies make stuff here? We've already seen a bunch of announcements, most notably Honda, not going out of the country, going to build a plant in Indiana. the largest semiconductor producer is going to build plants here. That's good. We want to encourage investment here, and that's the easiest way to avoid paying a tariff. And it's also, obviously, as you see on a daily basis, it's a negotiating tool. They're on, 10 minutes later, they're off. The craziness is driving us all nuts, for sure, right? But that's the leverage here, isn't it?
And the political messaging will dictate where someone lies on that argument, right? If you are following one party and you're thinking the tariffs are simply in place to create more jobs for U.S. workers, then you might be on the side of it. If you're on the other side and you think that these tariffs are just going to cause price increases, by and large, though, what's fascinating about this is, we were talking about this earlier, I've taken a couple Ubers recently, and I'll get into conversations with Uber drivers. They have opinions on tariffs. We're having a legit conversation about tariffs with an Uber driver. Now, nothing against Uber drivers, but this is not their world. So they're following, TikTok or Instagram and something, and this has become entertainment.
Or they're overhearing Scott talking on his phone in the car.
True. That's true. But this has become entertainment. Where everyone everyone feels like they need to have an opinion on everything right now, and tariffs is one of those things. And people are, I don't want to say educated about it, but they'll learn about it from this soundbite, clickbait culture that we're currently in. And watching a 5-minute video of some 22-year-old breaking down what tariffs are doesn't make you an expert. This is way more nuanced in a global economy that has many different impacts.
And that has had tariffs since the beginning of time, basically.
But we're also not going to know the effect of this for months from now.
Or that none of them may actually happen.
Or it may not even happen. So it's all speculation, but you don't need to have an opinion on everything right now. It's okay to wait.
Why? They're free. Opinions are free.
I think everyone just feels like they need to become an expert. It's not even just having an opinion at this point. It's kind of being an expert.
I agree that it's hard because we always want to hear, especially when you talk about blue collar jobs. We want to have jobs for blue collar workers, strong middle class, and then you think about the auto industry. And when American companies are producing cars outside of this country, that's something that upsets people. So, there's a political aspect to it because it's a politician that's doing it. But I think that even wherever you lie, most people may say, well, we should protect these jobs at least, or let's protect the farmers, or let's protect this group of people because we need that. We want to support that. And that is, again, one of these three uses. And
whenever we have these conversations, though, I can't help but think about Thomas Sowell, because his quote resonates and it applies to all this, where there are no solutions, just trade-offs.
Right.
That's it.
Nobody ever gets everything they want.
Correct.
Thomas Sowell wrote some great books.
Amazing.
Very easy to digest. And that's a lot saying for an economist. That's why I don't write books. That's too much work. What's a book?
Audiobook.
Yeah. You want to listen to my voice? Will you narrate it?
No, Greg, it's your audiobook.
No, I can't.
It's your voice.
Could you imagine? I got to watch these back and it's like 30 minutes of me talking. I can't take it, let alone the Greg Heym audiobook. That'd be we'll get Ray to do it. He'd do that for me. He's laughing. All right, we got to take our last break and we'll be right back with the latest on mortgage rates and other things.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
So, a month ago, roughly, the Treasury Secretary kind of announced that we're not going to try to interfere or talk the Fed into or out of anything when it comes to short-term rates. They're going to do what they're going to do. We're more worried about the 10-year. And that's news to our ears because that's what drives mortgage rates, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe this was like a stealth thing. Like we thought like they were blowing us off, that they weren't going to push for rate cuts. But in the last month, the 10-year's gone from about 4.63 to 4.22. Mortgage rates have fallen for 7 straight weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe there's something to this. Look at the 10-year thing, right? And that's the best news for housing. And the Fed's going to do what it's going to do, and that's the gas or the brake on the economy. But this can be far more beneficial in the long term. Right?
Absolutely. And that spread between the 10-year Treasury and 30-year fixed mortgage rates is shortening a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's historically, right around 200 basis points, 150 basis points.
Yeah, 150 to 2. Yeah,
right now it's been around 250. It was a little bit high. It was close to 300.
Well, because there's that premium, because a lot of they'll blame it on what happened with the regional banks, and they want a little bit more for the risk.
Yep.
Or they're just greedy.
Right.
However you want to
I will say too, it's important for people to understand that this is a general rate when they talk about mortgage rates. It's not your rate. Everyone's situation, from their credit score to the type of property to how they're going to use that property to how much money they're going to put down, whether it's a jumbo loan, whether it's a non-jumbo loan, all these types of things impact someone's rate. I spoke to a client yesterday who is looking to buy a home. He, in 2024, made over $1.1 million. In 2023...
Didn't we all? No? Okay.
Maybe you did.
As far as you know, that's not true.
In 2023, the same person made $45,000, right? In 2022, he showed negative $150,000. So here's someone from a bank's perspective, there's no stability there at all.
No,
banks love that. They like stability. They don't want to see the fluctuations in someone's income. So when we're talking about rates, for him, we just want to see if you can get approved. Rates are secondary for you right now. Let's see how much money we can get you, if we can get you approved, and then we'll start to figure out kind of what that rate is. So it's, we'll have clients call us and say, I'm reading that rates are dropping or that rates are lower. And by and large, you are right, but I need to learn about you. I need to know what your scenario is, and then we'll figure out kind of what the rate is.
And all banks have the Greg Heym rate. You get
the discount. If you just say Greg Heym, your rate automatically drops.
Yeah. Why wouldn't it?
No, it does. That's yeah. I didn't think we were going to talk about that today, but
now
it's out there.
Everybody feels like they know you. It's like, I know Scott. I watch him on the show with the bald guy that sits next to him.
Yeah.
But also, we talk about the fear of a recession. Obviously, that's going to bring rates down to a certain degree. And when stocks are tanking, the way it works is people are going to sell stocks. They're going to run to bonds because they're very safe. The prices are going to go up because demand goes up. And when the price of a bond goes up, the rate goes down.
Mm-hmm.
An inverse relationship.
Yep.
Because you pay $900 for a $1,000 bond, you're getting a better rate of return than if you pay $950. So just think of it that way. And it's great for the housing market. Again, we don't want to root for a slowing economy and bad news, but you might as well enjoy it when you get it. And going back to, we talked about recession. I don't think we're close to recession right now. I think we have to wait and see. And the GDP number is not the thing to look at right now because of the rush to get goods in here before any potential tariffs happen. We have to look at consumer spending, and that could still be pretty weak, but it's going to have to go on for longer than a couple of months. So, and the stock market, if tomorrow there was an announcement made that we're not going to tariff anything, everything would shoot up and we'd all be happy again.
You're right.
Now, from my lips to, God's ears, as they say, but that's not going to happen. But once things calm down, markets adjust.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're trying to do dramatic things, or make major changes, which we've seen before in all kinds of administrations, there's always major plans, whether it's tax cuts, tax hikes, changes to the healthcare system, things of that nature. There's an adjustment period. You can take advantage of that as a potential home buyer because as more people, have that flight to safety and quality, that's going to keep pushing rates down.
Yeah. And looking at where rates were in March of 2024 versus where they are now, they're 0.25% lower now.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So what does that mean? For every $100,000 borrowed, that's a $20 difference. So if someone wants to borrow $1 million, that's a $200 a month difference there. So things are changing. Things are moving in the right direction as far as trending downward and making things more affordable for people. And we're seeing that. Like our applications are up. We always measure it by how many credit reports are actually being pulled, because that's where it starts. You start with getting your credit report pulled, you get pre-approved, and those numbers are increasing.
And that's good. And as inventory rises, as it typically does this time of year, that combination is going to make things a little more affordable. And for those prospective home buyers out there, learn from what happened in September of last year. If you just say, if you think you can call the rate, where it's going to be, and you're going to go then, you're going to miss out. There's a lot of uncertainty now. There's a lot on people's minds. It's a good time to be out there negotiating. And when things calm down, it's going to be a lot harder to get concessions. And we've talked about this numerous times. There are plenty of concessions to be had and creative ways to do it. That's what the professionals are for. But, it's certainly the weather is actually going to be good this week. We're going to hit the 60s here.
Thank God.
It was just 20 degrees a week ago. Like, this is crazy.
You're complaining?
Yes. That's what I do. I complain. Everybody has a thing. That's what I do.
I get it.
Again, now that I'm assisted living eligible age, I have to complain. It's just, they give you a kit. Like when you're 50, you get your AAP card. When you're 55, you get your things you're now allowed to complain about. That everything costs too much. It's too cold in here. Stuff like that.
If we recorded an episode at this nursing home that I was at, they'd be brutal. They'd be throwing things at us. They'd be arguing with us. It was actually very entertaining.
We would just agree with them, and then that's how you get them on your side.
Yeah,
you just listen.
They'd ask you to speak up. It would be really entertaining.
All right,
you want to think about it.
So it's going to be a big week. It's always a big week. Get inflation numbers, JOLTS numbers. That's the job openings, labor turnover survey, retail sales. So we got a lot more data coming in, and that's really going to tell us about the future. But I just got one more rant.
What do you got? This
is a 3-rant episode. Usually, I don't even do one. I'm a diehard Yankee fan, as you can tell by my Ron Guidry bobblehead. Mm-hmm. And 3 of our best players are now injured, potentially for the whole season. Garrett Cole, you just start hearing Tommy John. Heel is going to be out for several months, the reigning rookie of the year. And Stanton, they said he originally was double tennis elbow. I mean, does he play tennis like, or is it you're lifting too many weights, Giancarlo, and you're putting too much stress, and that's why you have these injuries that don't sound serious but keep you out? And a lot of people say, well, don't worry, he's money in the playoffs. Well, we got to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah.
I have a question though. We wonder why pitchers can't throw 200 innings consistently like they used to, or why Garrett Cole in his second start now has what could be a season-ending injury. Do they do baseball activities in the winter, or is it just I'll just go in the weight room and try to get bigger because the faster I can throw a ball, the harder I can hit it, I'll get paid more money. Babe Ruth used to come into camp like 50 pounds heavy. He'd shed the weight and he'd play the whole season. And they used to have to ride trains. They weren't pampered like that.
He was a freak. I think there is a ramping up period that athletes go through. So you have a grueling 162 game season, you have the playoffs, and then you have this time off. And what are they doing in that time off, right? Everyone has a different approach, but going from that to then starting spring training, and you're not throwing as hard in the off season as you are in.
But shouldn't you be?
Spring training, maybe. But you also need that downtime. So I think it's sometimes we can even look at real estate, let's say. Now, how am I going to tie this into real estate?
Waiting.
I'm going to try to land this plane here.
Ray put his feet up just to see, I got to hear this one.
Think about what happens when a real estate company recruits a new person to join their firm. What do? In that first 90 days, that agent does all the right things. They're working their tail off. From a marketing perspective to a networking perspective, they're letting the entire world know they switch companies, right, and they get reinvigorated for their business. There's that ramping up period. And then what happens? Then it dies down. It's almost like people, New Year's, their resolution is I'm going to start going to the gym. They ramp up, maybe they tweak something, and then they fall off. It's the people who are like LeBron James. This is why it's so impressive what this guy has done, because it's 20 years of knowing exactly how to take care of his
Well,
body.
he spends a lot of money on it too. Yeah, you got to.
These guys are making a lot of money. What should they spend their money on?
It's ironic you say that because now he's injured, but
I know, but he'll be okay.
he'll be okay.
I mean, he still has. I mean, even if he's done for the season, he still has a body of work that proves this theory.
He's one of the greats. Yeah.
And I think you have the top people that know that don't have that ramping up period. They're just consistent. They're just consistent all the way through. And some of these injuries are freak things that can happen to anyone, but the best athletes, the best professionals are just very consistent. They have habits and they follow through with that. And then when you have people that you can't
Or some people are just made of a different, like.
That's true too.
You look at people like Nolan Ryan and Warren Spahn, they were pitching in their mid-40s and were as good as anybody in the league at that point. But I do have a theory on pitchers. And I think the real problem is that kids throw too many innings at too young an age. Because to me, that's what's changed in my lifetime. Training methods are better, they're stronger, they're bigger, they throw harder and all that stuff. So why can so few pitchers, we don't have complete games anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ron Guidry would throw 20 a year. And people used to throw 250, 300 innings like it was nothing. I think
is it the type of pitches that people are able to throw today versus because there are more options?
There's a lot more emphasis placed on speed, but speed was always in when Nolan Ryan was pitching. Everybody wanted to know how fast he was throwing, or Doc Gooden. And pitchers have always had arm injuries. Some people just have bad luck. But when you look at what travel sports has done to baseball and all the other team sports that are played, these kids are playing almost year round. You know, Bobby Orr, the legendary hockey player, talks a lot about this. He said, I played hockey in the winter and baseball in the summer. The first camp I ever went to was when I was at the Bruins and I was teaching a camp.
Mm-hmm.
When kids are out there pitching 12 years old and they're throwing curveballs all the time, my father wouldn't let me throw a curveball. And I'm lefty. We're not good at throwing curveballs. We throw sliders. But I just think it's too many at too young an age. And to me, that's the only explanation.
It's also very much so an American thing as well.
Yeah.
If you look at European basketball players, they focus on skill work, less so on competition. Whereas you have kids today who are playing 2-3 games a weekend, and in the summer they're playing every single day competition games.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe, they are playing typically 1 to 2 games a week. That's it. And the rest of the time, they're just they're working on like skills, like shooting and
there's no pickup
ball
games
handling
anymore with kids in the summer. You don't see it. Everything is so organized, and it's. You wonder if these kids' body. You know, you see it with tennis players. Morgan's in here watching. She's a tennis player. You see these young girls at 14, 15 hit the tour, and they're done by 18 because their body can't take that stress because they don't have time to develop. And I think that's part of it too. When you have these kids, fastball's always been a moneymaker. Go back to Bob Feller and Walter Johnson, who threw so hard. So they say, well, there's this push to hit the ball farther and to throw it faster. It's always been the case. People notice that. It's ridiculous that DJ LeMahieu takes 2 at bats and he's probably out, you know, for God knows how long. Cole, it's the second start. You could set your watch to John Carlos Stanton's first injury in spring training. Like you could set your watch by it. It's just frustrating. I know the Mets are dealing with this now, and everybody has to deal with injuries. It's just a frustrating thing, especially since, you know, the Yankees are at least have a good chance of being successful. We're in the World Series last year.
I just pulled my hamstring listening to you, so it's out
We're
there.
not-
Something is ultimately going around, I think.
But people don't think economics is a contact sport. I don't know why not.
Well,
I get chased around here all the time by people with pitchforks who don't like what I write. That's why I have Ray. Ray's the security for me. He
wears many hats.
He wears many hats. Well, we do that because we don't have many hairs, so we wear many hats. All right, well, that's enough rants. You know, I've proven my grumpy old man cred.
Shout out to Lena and her birthday. She had an aggressive weekend. She's been yawning a lot. She's recovering, but National Nap Day came perfectly.
I thought it was National Lena Day there for a second. We're not going to bake cakes because you probably wouldn't want to eat, but we should have had cake. We got to get better organized with this stuff.
Yeah.
There's too much economic data to keep track of. Well, thanks to Lena, Ray, and Morgan for for being with us in studio. And thanks, as always, to Scott Nadler for his support of the show and his great mom. They pay me to do this. It's okay. But I'll take all the thank yous I can get. So, again, we'll have some more data and some more funny stories and maybe 2 or 3 more rants. If there's a topic you want us to rant on, CTL@bhsusa.com. But have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.